Greetings, fellow scholars of the livestream. I'm Kutakuma from the Cosmo Observatory, and today we are continuing the analysis of all new elements pertaining to Cloud and Sephiroth in the Final Fantasy VII Remake first installment. We highly recommend that you watch all the previous parts visible on screen before continuing, just so you can receive the full context. You can find the continuously growing playlist in the info card up there. Still here? Fantastic! Strap in and enjoy the next segment of our journey. Caution, spoilers ahead. When Cloud lands in the Sector 5 church, the flashback from the original game happens as well. Similar dialogue, but better visualization. After Tifa's mother passed away 13 years ago, she went to Mount Nebel to find her. Cloud was the only one to actually follow her all the way, compared to Tifa's other 3 chicken-wuss friends. The unstable bridge gave way, and both fell into the chasm. Cloud only got scraped knees, while Tifa fell into a coma for 7 days, and he got blamed for it. Cloud was angry at himself for this weakness, not being able to protect nor save Tifa. After hearing about Soldier and Sephiroth a few years later, he decided to join Soldier, partly because of the aforementioned incident. This memory is thus tied to his new persona, hence the missing glitch effect. Falling down a long way from a bridge and getting away with only scraped knees again was the connection needed to trigger this flashback, in the original as well as in the remake. However, due to this memory's ties to Sephiroth, he manages to hijack Cloud's subconscious once again. When Cloud asks who the other voice in his head is,
"Hey, who are you?"
Instead of waking up in the church, Cloud's real self is replaced with Sephiroth. The surroundings turn dark immediately, underlying the switch from Cloud's real self to Sephiroth's intrusion. After the switch, Cloud asks again, and now Sephiroth answers instead.
"Who are you?"
"I am your everything."
The English version sounds much more mysterious and quite vague, implying that he is all-encompassing, possibly referring to Cloud being a Sephiroth clone and thus basically him. In Japanese, however, Sephiroth calls himself Cloud's master, implying that Cloud is his puppet, just like he directly tells him after the battle against Genova Life. The Japanese version thus makes more sense. Sephiroth's next line, before Aerith completely pierces through and awakens Cloud, reveals that he still has a lot of plans for Cloud.
"Oh, Cloud, there's still so much to be done."
So much is clear after his plea to Cloud to join him in defying destiny together at the edge of creation. However, it seems that Cloud's friends keep disrupting Sephiroth's plans, constantly calling for adjustments. As a side note, this line might also be a callback to Dirge of Cerberus' secret ending, where Genesis awakens to pick up Vyse and fly away. There, he uses a similar line.
"We still have much work to do."
There's also another interesting bit about this scene. Contrary to the remake, the original version is completely silent. However, the remake added a beautiful but eerie version of Who Am I?, which plays during Cloud's and Tifa's trip in the livestream, where they piece Cloud's real memories back together. This connection might be the reason why they opted to use the track Who Am I? Instead of Who Are You? The same phrase Cloud uses in this scene twice, making it the better candidate on surface level. During the conversation with Aerith, she mentions her own special materia is
not good for anything at all.
This triggers Cloud's newfound memories of the future, the event in which Aerith loses that special materia, a very traumatic experience for Cloud. We see the holy materia fall, bounce off of one of the steps, dive into the water, and glow on the ground, interjected with Aerith praying on the altar in the Forgotten City. Since Cloud doesn't know what to make of it, he seems to just shrug it off and continue the conversation as he did in the original.
Bet you just don't know how to use it.
Important to note here is that those glimpses of the future aren't taken from the animation movie Advent Children, even if they look similar. There, we only see the holy materia flying in midair, piercing the water's surface without disturbing it much, and Aerith praying. Here, however, we see the holy materia bounce, causing a big splash when piercing the water's surface, in a different angle no less, and then rest on the pond's ground. When looking at the shot of Aerith, she seems to wear bracelets different to their original and remake design. Instead, they bear a certain similarity to the original's Minerva band or the remake's Gothic bangle. If it's the former, her connection to Minerva is something the remake could explore, as some fans have already speculated. For example, that Aerith will eventually replace Minerva as the goddess of the livestream and planet. We can also make out a circle-like element on either side, but due to the level of distortion, it's hard to tell what they are. We'll get a better look at this image later in the analysis, so let's move on to the next scene. Remember how Cloud almost killed Marco and Johnny and only didn't because of Tifa's interventions? Well, the same happens here. Due to Aerith's different behavior, a battle between Reno and Cloud ensues. When Reno is beaten, Cloud attempts to finish him off for good when Aerith calls out to him not to do it. That, and the appearance of the Whispers, stop Cloud in his tracks, saving Reno's life. Thanks to Sephiroth's manipulative appearance earlier, Cloud's inner hatred has been inflamed again. However, thanks to spending time with Aerith and the lack of more Sephiroth interferences, he seems to calm down over time, as we see later. For example, when confronting Leslie, where he never seriously aims to attack him. After saving those two adventurous kids who were being threatened by a hedgehog pie and a smogger, they run ahead of Cloud and Aerith shortly before reaching the hideout. This triggers one of Cloud's suppressed memories of young Tifa and her friends catching up, calling her by name, with one even asking her to wait.
Tifa, wait! Tifa! Tifa!
Why a suppressed memory? The green glitch effect gives it away, and it is part of his real past, which fortunately does not stand in conflict with his new persona. It's possible that this short scene depicts Tifa's departure from Mount Nebel in search of her deceased mother. It's what led Tifa and Cloud to fall off the bridge, and eventually to Cloud's determination to join Soldier. Shortly after, they finally meet the man in the black robe, the guy that are sick. The same one with the number 2 tattooed on his arm, living in this weird tube in the original game. Strangely, he's now wearing the same black robe as Marco does, despite wearing normal clothes in 1997. When he enters the scene, he scares the kids, and eventually topples over and hits the ground. He seems to suffer from the same Mako poisoning as Marco does. Something similar happens here too. Nameless number 2 grabs Cloud, this time his arm, which triggers Cloud's Genova cells, making him see Sephiroth instead of number 2, who calls for the reunion.
The reunion. There's nothing to fear.
This must be how all black-robed people feel like, and what they see and hear when they're being called to participate in Genova's reunion. The next memory glitch ends the image of Sephiroth, and Cloud sees number 2 again. While he's watching number 2 lurch away, the Genova cells in Cloud seem to begin to take over as he starts to slowly follow number 2. He looks at his trembling hand, trying to get a hold of himself, though only manages to do so with Aerith's touch and voice telling him to get it together. Interestingly, Cloud saw Sephiroth instead of Marco just by proximity, but with number 2, he had to be touched first. It's possible that Aerith's company reduced the Jenova cell's resonance, increasing the reaction threshold. Number 2 also starts walking about before encountering Cloud or even being close to him. Maybe Sephiroth's continuous interventions and the previous meeting with Marco increased Cloud's reunion capabilities. It's important to note that this is not future Sephiroth calling in from the negative livestream. He'd behave differently. But we'll go into the 4 shades of Sephiroth at a later point in this analysis. Lastly, this scene gives us a good view on this strange symbol painted on number 2's black robe. It vaguely resembles Jenova, a mixture between its human form and the doll placed before her tank in the Nibelheim reactor. But instead of spread out wings, the ones on this symbol are partially folded in. Could this be symbolism for an incomplete Jenova? A fragment of the whole? It's what those black-robed figures are, after all. As we already discussed in our thorough analysis about Aerith and her role in the remake, the scene in the tunnel connecting Sector 5 to Sector 6 has many similarities to the one in Cloud's dream after he loses consciousness in the Temple of the Ancients. If you somehow haven't watched the aforementioned analysis yet, be sure to do so after this video to get up to speed about our conclusions on which parts of this analysis build upon. You can find it in the info card up there. Anyway, in this scene, Aerith's similar movements trigger Cloud's additional memories from the original timeline obtained by Aerith's touch. Again, we see the green glitch effect, but instead of visuals, we only see Cloud shedding a tear. We think the writer chose to not show us what Cloud actually sees to, for one, keep the mystery, and for another, not spoil too much of the original game. Still, they could have superimposed an image of the sleeping forest over the surroundings around Aerith, similar to Nibelheim in Chapter 2, just much shorter. Maybe they had this planned, but time constraints forced them to not show anything at all, as this would have meant creating a forest area from scratch just for this one scene. The choice of music is also very interesting. We hear the high-pitched string note and first 7 notes from the beginning of the livestream theme. Since Aerith enters Cloud's dreams via the livestream in the original, playing this theme here makes perfect sense. It's also a hint that those memories are in fact from the livestream's memories, giving more credibility to our assessment in Game Analysis Episode 24 about Aerith's secret, which concludes that the events of the remake's first installment happen entirely within the livestream's memory. Have you noticed that the 7th and last note of the livestream's melody hits exactly when Cloud's tear rolls down his cheek? Nice touch, isn't it? We also covered the upcoming scene extensively in our analysis about Aerith's secret, so if you need the full context, go watch it afterward and, optionally, skip to that scene using the timestamp system. That being said, we're dealing with yet another repressed memory being triggered here, a very strong one at that. Aerith mentions Zack's name, which she never did in the original game, causing Cloud's mind to almost shatter, as his whole current persona relies on taking Zack's place as if he never existed. Luckily, the Jenova cells in his body manage to fix the memory leak and Cloud returns to, normal. At the start of Chapter 12, we stumble into another fight against the Whispers. The third one so far, and the second one against a purple Enigmatic Specter controlled by Sephiroth. While it dragged Tifa away from Cloud in Chapter 4, it merely blocks the way, and casually takes a hit from Cloud's sword without flinching, reflecting its invulnerability until we dispatch a mysterious Specter. Like last time, it only turns purple once the battle starts. It's also accompanied by 4 other Whispers, 3 in sight, and a 4th one coming into view from the left upon the start of the battle. This coincides with Sephiroth's key art, where we can also see 4 Whispers floating around behind him. After either beating the Enigmatic Specter or fighting for a set amount of time, the battle ends, and we see 3 Whispers flying towards the pillar. This is important, as those might represent the same 3 at the beginning of the battle, and the ones floating above Biggs, Jessie, and around Wedge, respectively. The 4th one entering the view then represents the 4th one accompanying the other 3 to hold Wedge in place. As we discussed in Game Analysis episode 23, Whispers Uncloaked, a regular Whispers intervention does not make sense here. Slowing down the group doesn't prevent them from stopping the plate from falling. That's what the Whisper intervention on the pillar itself is for, to give Root enough time to press the button. What needs to happen is the plate falling, Biggs, Wedge, and Jessie dying, and Aerith being kidnapped. Not the specific way of how it happens. Even seeing Wedge fall isn't necessary, as Tifa would ask Aerith to take care of Marlene anyway, which is what leads to Sung kidnapping her. And even if it somehow was important for the party to not arrive too early, it would be much easier for the Whispers to build an impassable wall just before the Pillar Plaza. No need to slow them down here. On top of that, Whispers don't normally fight agents of change. They merely block, shove, move, or hold them in place, which, in conclusion, makes this battle entirely initiated by Sephiroth. Also, it's a timed battle, so it's about slowing them down and not blocking them. The battles in Chapter 4 didn't run on a timer, which suggests those instances have been about completely blocking Cloud. An entirely different but important question is how Sephiroth is even able to interfere without one of Cloud's flashbacks connected to him. Like in Chapter 4, Whispers are already on high alert, so ensure that this event happens as preordained. Thanks to constant meddling up to now, their meticulous observation is pertinent. Such a concentration of Whispers provides enough of a passage for Sephiroth to intervene. But why would he need to intervene here in the first place? We get the answer in Chapter 13, during his next appearance. On their way to Elmira, just before reaching Wall Market, Cloud suffers from another flashback triggered by Barrett's brief explanation of who the Ancients are. This happens in the original as well, although not in the same location, as they take the hazardous road through the collapsed expressway there, while taking the safer route through Wall Market here. Another change is Cloud's trigger. In the original, his glitched flashback starts immediately after Barrett's mentioning the Ancients, while the remake gives him a bit more time to hear Barrett's explanation about the stewards of the planet. However, the memory itself is the same.
In my veins courses the blood of the Ancients. I am one of the rightful heirs to this planet.
Within my veins flows the blood of Ancients. This planet is my birthright.
Like in Chapter 2, and after landing in the church, Sephiroth uses this flashback of Cloud about him to connect yet again, appearing right in front of him right after the flashback ends. It's important to note that the background is purely white here, as it was while Cloud's past self was talking to him in Chapter 8. What connects the two? Both represent memories of events, but not of the events themselves. The same white background is shown in Advent Children when Aerith or Zack communicate with Cloud, and even during the ending cinematic in this game. White backgrounds during scenes can thus be attributed to communications through the live stream, initiated either by a specific entity, like Aerith or Zack, a specific memory, or even through changes, like in the ending. Anyway, when the actual Sephiroth takes over in Chapter 8, the background turns to black, as Cloud is still unconscious. Here, the actual Sephiroth appears in the environment around Cloud, just like he did in Chapter 2.
You have failed again, I see.
Here, Sephiroth refers to the destruction of Sector 7, which Cloud wasn't able to save, as well as to Biggs and Jessie, which he failed to protect, yet again. According to our current theory, the events in this game take place within the livestream's memory, which Sephiroth intends to change. So, from his perspective, Cloud failed to save Sector 7 again. Although, he could also refer to Cloud's previous failures, like failing to save his mother, Tifa in Mount Nibel, and the Nibelheim reactor, as well as failing to become a soldier.
But through suffering, you will grow strong. Isn't that what you want?
Those lines are quite insidious. Sephiroth conflates a negative feeling with a positive motivation to increase confusion and sow despair. Cloud does want to grow stronger, but only to protect what's dear to him. However, failing to do so is what results in suffering. So, instead of preventing the suffering as a result of growing stronger, Sephiroth suggests that suffering is what makes Cloud grow stronger, turning his motivation upside down. Now we know why Sephiroth wanted Cloud to witness Wedge, Biggs, and Jessie getting hurt or even die. To suffer by not arriving at the pillar early enough to save them, which he achieved by sending the Whispers to keep them busy. Although it is in Sephiroth's interest for Cloud to grow strong, just for another reason. He needs Cloud to become strong enough to help him escape his prison, for which he might need Cloud to be removed of all emotional attachments. While this notion is rather speculative, it's important to keep in mind for the end of this analysis. Cloud is noticeably absent during this whole segment between finding Wedge and defeating the failed experiment with Barret and Tifa. I wonder what he did the whole time. In any case, after dealing the penultimate blow to the failed experiment to give Barret an opening to finish it off with his limit break attack, all three get a glimpse of the human experiments being conducted down there. It seems that all those unknown entities we fought before were once normal humans. This fact triggers bad memories in Cloud, and reminds him of his time in one of those tanks while being Hojo's subject. Interestingly, this flashback is categorized as a PTSD moment, and is not suppressed. We assume that Cloud only remembered being a subject, and not that he was still a mere infantryman, and not a soldier. Like in Chapter 2, when he remembered watching his home being burned to the ground while wearing his soldier outfit instead of the attire befitting an infantryman. In any case, the Whispers don't like that he remembered this, and as a result, instantly transport everyone out and rob Cloud's memory of this flashback as we described in the analysis about the Whispers. And with that, we conclude this segment of the journey through Cloud's and Sephiroth's mysteries. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please give us a thumbs up and make sure to subscribe and select all notifications to be immediately notified when the next part of this analysis releases. Have you noticed anything we didn't? Disagree on some points or have any other feedback for us? Please let us know in the comments, or better yet, check out our Discord server and right away in the Observatory channel. We also release additional content on Twitter, like Viz's infamous CCO gems, so follow us there as well if you're so inclined. Furthermore, huge thanks to all our Patreon and Subscribestar supporters. Your contribution is invaluable. You guys are the best. Stay safe and take care. Kutakuma, signing off.